Hi, it's Anne-Marie from Charmed Life Therapy again, back checking in with you all and just updating what's going on. So we're kind of just hearing all the motions to quash being addressed, I guess, now. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about everything that's going on, because everything that's going on is all a story. And it's a story living out in all of our minds too, because everything that we see in life or everything that we think in life, all of these thoughts in our head, it literally is just a story. It's that I think, and that anything that follows that, you've got to kind of bear in mind that that is a story. It's your perspective of it. Anything that follows I think isn't necessarily real, and we're all doing this all of the time. So kind of I was being, I don't know if you'd call it trolled or questioned or something in the last couple of days in the comments. Just one person, I'm very lucky, it's just one person. But it was their perspective on things. So the first message that came through was something like, oh, you're very ballsy to talk about this thing, knowing that it's going to kind of sit there and you ruin your chances of working in a clinic, blah, 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 unless you don't have a degree and you're not worried about that. So it's like, it's kind of interesting when you get these things, because there's no point kind of getting upset about it, because what you're looking at is somebody's perspective on the world. So if you've had any kind of training, and I'm wondering if this person, and again this is a story in my head, I'm wondering if the problem with this person is maybe that they're studying for a degree, didn't get the degree, is somehow infuriated by me talking about this because they don't think I have a degree. But kind of they're putting that out there. I'm not qualified to talk about this, and if I am qualified to talk about it, I shouldn't be talking about this, because we're talking about a victim here. In the second message, he basically called me trash for talking about a victim in this way. So kind of, I think the majority of us out there would kind of look at Blake Lively and not see a victim. I don't think any of us, or the majority of us that are following this case, realistically think that we're looking at a victim when it comes to Blake Lively. If we're looking at a victim, it's a victim of her own actions. I think that's what we're looking at here. Even when I read that second comment and it said victim, my thoughts went straight to Justin. It was only when I read it again I thought, oh no, she's talking about Blake. And the thing is, there's no point me responding or to being called things like trash because of an opinion I have. Anything I say here, I do try to give you the emotional perspective of it, or try and think about what's happening behind the scenes. But I don't think I come across as blaming for the most part, or shaming. I try not to get into hate and insults and all of the rest of it, because I think the whole thing is a shame, really. It's a pity that it ever started in the first place, that people have kind of done these things to themselves. But yeah, it was basically saying, it called into question the modality that I use, rapid transformational therapy, and saying it's not like a clinically proven thing, but they are actually doing clinical trials now of RTT, so it will be a clinically trialed thing eventually, however you want to term it. And the thing is, I know for myself it works, because the reason I studied it was because it worked for me. I didn't kind of waste my time going down some other route or spending years getting a degree, and I totally respect anybody that does that. We need all of the forms of work that go on psychologically and emotionally these days. Some people will need more than one of a certain thing, you know what I mean? But it's just my perspective that this was really, really effective for me, and it was interested me to study in it. Hypnotherapy has been a factor in and out of my life several times during my life, and this was a unique perspective on it, so it's why I decided to go with it. I make no secret of the fact I haven't kind of got much in the way of formal education because I got bumped out of school at 12 years old. They kind of signed me off and said, you got anxiety and depression, and it wasn't handled very well. I wasn't treated very well. I was a victim of what happened, so I understand what it is to be a victim. And I also understand that victim mentality doesn't help you at all. You can be a victim and you can have had all sorts of things done to you, terrible things, but actually living in victim mentality will not help you. It kind of makes you think that life is against you, and the tone of these messages was definitely life is against me. People like you think you can X, Y, and Z, and that doesn't help you. And that's kind of the problem with Blake as well, really. This not acceptance of her own culpability in things. It has to be somebody else's fault. And it's like I was thinking today over, how many subpoenas are coming through and how many times these subpoenas on Blake's side of things, they have to have alternate service. She can't get hold of them. So service has to be like this, and it has to be like this, and it has to be like this. And because I don't pretend to know a lot about the law, I thought, why aren't we hearing all about how difficult Justin Baldoni is finding it to subpoena people? Because surely if it's that hard, it's a universal problem, and he should be experiencing same too. But I think this is the thing that you see on the docket, even as somebody that's not that legally knowledgeable. You think it's all Blake's side of things. It's kind of boring to me because it's so fun when Kevin Fritz writes something or Ellen Garofalo writes something. They're sort of really interesting and whizzy to read, aren't they? But you don't want to get it every so often because the whole thing is cluttered up with we're having a problem doing this and they did that and this and this and this. And it's all Blake's side of things, and it's all kind of victim mentality. This isn't working out fair, so I need this to happen. And they did this to me and it was really unfair. And and it's like even when we're seeing the answerings to the motion to quash, there's still an element of slightly threatening language that's used, and there's also an opportunity taken to bash the Wayfarer team. So kind of that's what's gone on in this. So this was on July 26th. So this is a response to those first batch of motions to quash. So we'll read through it. So Dear Judge Lyman, plaintiff Blake Lively writes in response to the motions to quash as to specific portions of Ms. Lively's July 3rd document subpoena to Google LLC, YouTube, classed as the Google subpoena to third parties Laura Naidy, Ashley Brianna Eve, Mackenzie Folks, who I think are Channels Ken's, isn't it? And Cassidy O'Connell, and Ms. Lively's July 3rd document subpoena to XCOR as to third party Leanne Newton, together with the Google subpoena, the subpoenas collectively, and to third parties. Based on the third parties' representations, I think they'd probably call themselves non-parties, not third parties, based on the third parties' representations made in meet and confers, public statements and or information provided in their moving papers, there is no further information required from the subpoenas as to these specific third parties at this time. Ms. Lively has therefore withdrawn the subpoenas as to them. Accordingly, Ms. Lively requests that the court deny the third party's motions to quash as moot. Etienne, she loves doing this moot thing, doesn't she? But I think I caught a little bit of Cassidy and Leanne chatting the other day, and they were saying there was no meet and confer whatsoever. I don't know that anybody has met and conferred, to my knowledge. I think Janessa, is that the astrology girl, she's had hers removed. The subpoena has disappeared. I think her lawyer might have conferred back in some means or another. But the way they use this language, it's kind of as if they have got information from them, whereas nobody has given them information, because every time they tried to clarify what was requested of them, they couldn't clarify what they really wanted of them. So nobody was giving way on anything. And I think what was happening is people realised if we meet and confer with these people, they're going to have IP addresses and such just from us meeting with them, us choosing to meet with them. And there's a real fear, isn't there, that giving any kind of little portion of information to Blake's side of things, you really don't know what they would do with that. There's a real sense of these people are unpredictable and they aren't safe to share information with. Blake wasn't a safe person to be a friend of. Look at what we heard about Taylor Swift. And do you believe or do you disbelieve that that threat was issued to release 10 years worth of text messages? I'm sure, I feel pretty sure, pretty confident that was a message that went out to Taylor Swift or to Taylor Swift's camp. I just feel that in my intuition. So as this continues, as the court knows, a core component of Ms. Lively's claims centre on the Wayfarer defendant's digital media smear campaign, which sought to manipulate the media landscape against her using untraceable sources to paint Ms. Lively as the aggressor. She is acting as the aggressor. She's proactively doing everything. So painting Ms. Lively as the aggressor instead of the victim. The Wayfarer defendants, it was quoting document 84 there, the Wayfarer defendants have recently taken to mocking Ms. Lively's reference to an untraceable digital campaign. Now, I don't think they did mock it. I think she's referencing there that Kevin Fritz letter where they agreed to take the seal off TAG's responses to those interrogatories. So that was the seal that said who they've been communicating with in the press and as to content creators. And he finished up that letter by saying, we're providing this because it's more important to reveal the truth, and we've decided it's more important that the truth is out there than to conceal our valuable sources. So we'd rather, in a way, take a financial hit and have the truth be known than conceal our sources. And hopefully that will in turn lead to Ms. Lively stopping using this term untraceable smear campaign. So I don't really think it was mocking. I think it was just more or less saying, what is it going to take for her to believe every bit of evidence? What is it going to take for her to look in that mirror that Brian Friedman referred to all that time ago? Do you remember the comment about, if Miss Lively's looking for evidence, pretty much all she needs to do is look in the mirror. If she's looking for the source of what happened, it literally is in the mirror staring her right in the face. So the Wayfarer defendants have recently taken to mocking Ms. Lively's reference to an untraceable digital campaign, claiming that such a notion defies common sense. That it was one word, wasn't it? They use incredible. And incredible just means it's not credible. It's not a credible thing to say. It's not mocking, it's just one word, incredible. It's not credible for her to keep saying that. It's kind of saying, it's kind of giving her a heads up, if you like. It's saying, lady, if you keep saying this, your credibility will remain in question. That's literally what it's saying. It's kind of being helpful in a way. It is. So document number 460 at 1. As they are well aware, the term untraceable was coined by defendant Melissa Nathan in discussing the blueprint of the Wayfarer Party's retaliatory plan. And now, so you could take that either way, retaliatory plan. I think it was more of a, what the heck do we do if she puts out some weird story about us? It wasn't retaliatory. I think if you looked at all of those text messages in context, it looked like we really don't want to have to respond, but if we have to, this is what it's going to look like. And, it's like every bit of language is being analysed to death here, isn't it? But it comes back to that thing of story. we talk so casually as human beings. Half the things we say, we don't mean, or we say it because we think it's expected of us, or we say it because we think it will reassure somebody, or we say it to get the job done regardless of our feelings. It's all it's all just nonsense, isn't it? A lot of what we do. So when Melissa Nathan said untraceable, when it comes to the court, I guess they're going to ask her what she means about this. What did she mean when she said untraceable? I think if she's thinking that it was a case of responding to positive things, or like having somebody jump on a comment stream if it was going the wrong way, and just attempt to say something positive that steered it in a different direction and steered it back to the talk about it being a film about DV, and away from talk about what was going on between him and her, and try and steer it back to the movie. Does that make it this mean, retaliatory, untraceable smear campaign? It's more like just saying, how are they going to know it's not just genuine? And it's like, it's just that thing of, who is anybody fooling here? Because they're all doing it. They're all doing it. How do I know that that person that trolled me the other day isn't some kind of person in Blake's employ that's been paid to sit on the internet and just, have a bash at anybody who seems to be saying anything negative about her? We just don't know. We know these things happen. Hollywood, they're all doing it. That's why they have PR people. That's why they have crisis PR people. That's just the way it goes. So that snapshot said, "Hi Jamie, Jen, so incredibly glad that the press went so well today. And from what I know, Justin felt incredibly supported. He's lucky to have you all. We took the day today to do some research and get digital quotes in from the two teams we use that get the best results. As you are both aware, we are in a predicament that we just do not know the outcome of right now, because we didn't know what the hell she was going to do. Saying that, full transparency is key. We have seen the most innocuous issues turn giant due to socials, or the hugest crisis have no effects on social whatsoever. You just cannot tell at this stage, but BL does have some of the TS, Taylor Swift, fan base, so we will be taking it extremely seriously, because the thing is, you don't know, and it's actually been quite a surprise as all of that, because I think a lot of people would have thought the Swifties would have jumped all over it and backed Blake and not asked questions and just... But the Swifties were incredibly quiet, weren't they? Now, whether that was Taylor, because Taylor was incredibly quiet, and the Swifties know which side the bread is buttered on, and they kind of do follow her lead in essence, and they wait and see maybe. But I think that was a legitimate concern. What if the Swifties jump all over this? There could be real trouble. So you can imagine the fear that was going on, like in the hearts of like Justin and Jamie and Jen Abel and all of these people, and the thoughts of the family and the livelihood and the future prospects and all of that, and knowing what has happened, to people like Amber Heard, who, much did it to herself and that, but ended up having to go live in Spain and what have you. Social media is this very powerful thing, and you can't predict it, and that's what they're saying here. So the saying we have to be really prepared for kind of all eventualities, and in a way, this is just my thought, but they kind of have to. If she plays dirty, playing dirty is the only way to counteract that. And how do we do that in a way we can live with? That would have been my thought about what might have been going on. And Justin's point of view, certainly from the text messages we've seen, certainly seemed to have been that he didn't want to hurt her, and he didn't want to go down this rabbit hole, but he kind of had to be prepared to do something just to deflect, if necessary, from what she was saying, because he couldn't control it. He couldn't control anything. He was well educated on the fact that he couldn't control or predict Blake Lively's actions. So They must have had dreadful fear of at the time of where this was going to go and what he might have to do in response to that. So the TS fan base, so we will be taking it extremely seriously. We also understand audience is not solely JB fan base, but the studio, so it's covering all bases time. Quote 175k, this will be for a 3-4 month period and includes website to discuss full Reddit, full social account takedowns, a full social crisis team on hand for anything, engage with audiences in the right way, start threads of all theories to discuss. This is the way to be fully 100% protected, not offensive, protected. Quote 2 was 25k per month, minimum 3 months, as it needs to seed, same as above, so it needs to grow. This will be for creation of social fan engagement to go back and forth with any negative accounts, helping to change narrative and stay on track. All of this will be most importantly untraceable. But again, it comes down to story. So Blake's story is that is them admitting that they will be doing harmful activities on Justin Baldoni Wayfarer's behalf. But I kind of read that, and I think the majority of people read that as, we don't really want to be doing any of these things, but given we can't predict what's going to happen, we might have to be prepared for this, and we might have to be prepared for that. But even the things that they're saying they're doing, they're talking about just changing the narrative, not to one of hate, but just steering away from kind of negativity. So they're not saying even that negativity is Blake saying this about him and Blake saying that about him. It's how do we keep the publicity for the movie on track so that it's not about the personal things that happen behind the scenes that we couldn't control, but how do we make sure this movie's successful and that everybody comes out of it looking okay? Because you know that along the line, he more than once said that he didn't want to hurt Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni. He never wanted any of this to happen. He never wanted to have to be considering paying somebody between 25 and 175k. What was that per month? To bloody handle this thing. Why would he want to do that in the first place? He would only want to do that if he absolutely had to, because he was dealing with this unpredictable person. So there was no need to bring this into the answer to why they were withdrawing their subpoenas for these people. There was no need to bring any of this into it, because we already knew that these people had nothing to do with TAG's responses, to Blake's request for production. So it continues. Ms. Lively's subpoenas were one part of the discovery process aimed at gathering information to link the Wayfarer Party's activities to sources through YouTube and ex-content creator accounts. Ms. Lively's counsel has met and conferred with various individuals whose account information is the subject of the subpoenas, including the third parties who have filed motions to quash, and as set forth above, has determined to withdraw the subpoenas as to them. Ms. Lively's counsel has advised Google and X that the subpoenas are withdrawn as to each of the following social media handles identified by the third parties: Lethal Lauren, so that's Court of Random Opinion; Ashley Brianna Eve; Existing to Thrive. Well, I don't think it's Existing to Thrive Ken's. Is she? Is that Ken's? At Cassidy OC and at Kiara Jade 2001, and that's Leanne Newton and Cassidy O'Connell. Ms. Lively's counsel has provided each of the third parties a copy of such withdrawal, with the exception of Cassidy O'Connell, who moved under a pseudonym and has not provided a service email or other contact information. Given the subpoenas have been withdrawn as to each of the third parties who moved, plaintiff respectfully requests that each of their respective motions to quash be denied as moot in their entirety. And bear in mind, they're not promising that they won't come back at these people or try again or try a different request. They're not saying that. They're not promising that to anybody. And this is what's angered people really about all the trouble that people have had to go to. I think Leanne Newton said she actually did like a quick process to change her name by deed poll to Leanne Newton for the purposes of doing this, so that she didn't have to reveal her real name. I think Cassidy had to bring somebody onto a YouTube account so that she could send that letter in somebody else's name as somebody responsible for the channel. It's like all the expense and the stress that this has caused, and it is just because Blake Lively refuses to look in that mirror, and she refuses to see somebody else's perspective on a thing. She can't look at that text message chain and see it for what it is. A bunch of people who aren't trying to retaliate against her, a bunch of people who are trying desperately to protect themselves against her. That's what it was. And thinking, this is what money is going to have to be spent if we have to move in some way, and this might be what it has to look like. But they're not saying, this is what we're going to do. We're doing it on that day. I'm going to spend all, she leans into that thing of, oh, Steve Sarowitz claimed, said he was going to pay 100 million to ruin me and all of that. Where did that even come from? And again, it's all just a story, isn't it? It's all just a story. In life, you choose. I've just been doing a recording for a client today, and it's like, everything in your mind, everything you're listening to is just a story. And it's really important to remember in your daily life, every time you say, I think, whatever follows that is just to bear in mind, it's a story, it's one perspective, and it's based off of your lifetime of all the negative things that have happened to you that felt terrible, everything your family has said to you, or your work colleagues, or somebody else's fears, somebody else's perspective on the world. That's all it is, it's stories. So every time you say to yourself, I think X, Y, Z, and I try and rein myself in. So everything I say here is I think. It's my story, it's my feelings based on who I am, what's made me up. And if that lady doesn't like it, that's fine, just go watch somebody else. But you don't really need to call me trash, it's not helpful. And the thing, Etienne, the thing is that whatever you say to somebody in life, however you characterize them, bear in mind, it's just a reflection of what's going on in your mind. So if you project that onto somebody else, it tends to be because you think that about yourself, and it's your own frustrations and your own self-hate that you're projecting onto somebody else. So if you're on the receiving end of that, just always bear that in mind, that what you're witnessing and what you're feeling, what you're being encouraged to feel, is somebody else's pain, somebody else's frustration. And that's literally what's going on in this lawsuit. This whole movie was supposed to be Blake's moment of glory, the moment she kind of proved herself, because the movie before this was that the one that was it the rhythm section that was kind of before this, before she went off and had baby number 4, and that had the opportunity to be a decent movie, but it failed because she overstepped in that one too. And she actually got herself hired when they weren't looking to hire Blake Lively at all, and that's kind of what happened with this. It wasn't really for her, and that's kind of the problem. And the problem with Preserve, and the problem with her hair care brands and her booze brands, is she's not very good at seeing things through. She's good at titivating with things, playing around with details and tweaking, but she's not good at seeing a project through from start to finish. She doesn't seem to have the patience or the self-belief, even, if you like. Everybody thinks she's kind of told you that she's shy. And it can be true that you can be shy and do all of this crap too, because there's nothing worse than somebody that has low self-esteem, low self-worth, not very confident, that has a lot of power, because however they act is off the back of not feeling very great about themselves. Somebody that feels decent about themselves, that feels solid in the sense of self-worth, they don't have to act out all the time, because they can brush off life's events and they can realise what's true about them and what isn't, and what they're going to allow in to their own psyche and what they aren't. Whereas Blake has let in all of this negativity that she thinks is inorganic, and she's acting out against it. She's not seeing that she's refusing to see that people are just literally responding to her interviews and how she was, you know. So kind of the other thing I've been going to talk about for a few days was just how interesting it is, really. Because funnily enough, before all of this happened, I'd kind of stopped doing much on YouTube. It was kind of Blake Lively that brought me back into YouTube. I think that was how I more or less found the story, I guess. I don't really remember now how I kind of set about it. I know the Kirsty interview was one of the first things that I saw. And kind of then I must have just checked it out on YouTube, I guess, and then like kind of linked it, the Popcorn Planet was probably the next thing that popped up, and I was interested in them because they'd covered the Johnny Depp trial and stuff like that. And so all along this journey, you kind of pick up a content creator for a bit, see if they gel with you, then maybe you move on to somebody else. So it's been interesting to witness my own progression through it and who I've been enjoying and who I've been not. I mean, I was surprised to kind of find myself watching, you know, Perez Hilton. I would have never thought I'd have watched Perez's perspective on it, you know, because I know full well he's been, you know, quite mean and quite hurtful to certain people in the past, for sure, when he was younger, and possibly he's matured and changed a bit. But yeah, but it's like I did watch like people like us. I know like people have said about Ask Two Lawyers, and people are a bit mixed in the feelings about them, and I think you go with what triggers you or with what appeals to you. And I was a little bit when people really play devil's advocate, and Dave Neal's a bit like this as well. It's like, I'm not getting emotionally involved in this, I'm just telling you what I see on both sides of thing. And Ask Two Lawyers is very much about the law, and they like to point out how smart certain things are or what a good move it was. And a lot of people have a problem with Ask Two Lawyers, I think, when they seem to say that the Van Zandt subpoena was a good move and that it was smart and clever and tactical and the rest of it. And all of us that felt emotionally involved in the unfairness went, that feels terrible. Why are you like kind of saying or bigging, you know, because they were really banging on about what a good letter Ezra wrote here and what a good move this was by Ezra here, and I kind of got fed up of it. And then kind of there was one day where he reacted really badly to somebody kind of trying to bring more of an emotional and feelings perspective into it, and he clamped down on it, didn't it? Was he Stuart? And I thought, oh, this isn't for me going forward. Because it's like, if you can't say your piece emotionally, I always think there's a problem. It's like a little while ago I made a video and said about my brother, how he insists he's always fair and open-handed and open-minded and sees both sides of the things, but had literally told me 5 minutes before I was categorically wrong about everything and that there was no point discussing anything because it wouldn't help anybody. So that's not being fair and open-minded. You can't entirely dismiss somebody's emotional perspective on something, and you can't expect to do really well as a content creator, I don't think, if you're always going to overrule what public sentiment might be. And they just kind of rubbed me up the wrong way a couple of different times, and I just thought, oh, go in peace. you're not really kind of what I'm looking for in terms of what I'm consuming. And I find Dave Neal a little bit like that sometimes. It's like, you know, his headlines are often Blake Lively focused, and you think, all right, I'll go watch it, but then there's very little there that's to do with that, and he's covering lots of different things in one episode. And I know he was kind of in trouble the other day because he took a certain perspective on Candace Owens being sued by the Macrons, and he didn't want to know about the documentary and what was said, and he just thought, you don't comment on whether somebody's a man or a woman in public. Why is it your right to do that bit? And like a lot of people were like, you can't comment on this if you haven't actually watched it and you haven't kept an open, you can't tell people that you're keeping an open mind and you're seeing both sides, and then don't do your due diligence on that and look at the emotions and look at the evidence the other side has. I think David just had a very specific feeling in relation to how he feels about Candace Owens, and he's thinking, I'm not watching that documentary, I don't like what she's done, but I'm gonna have an opinion on it anyway. And you just can't really do that, can you really? It's like every time, it's like me, I can't really go into what Cassidy is saying or Leanne is saying because I've not consumed enough of their content to know the point of view, because I find their streams are just so long. I don't really want to commit that length of time to listening. I know it's, and like even on double speed, it's still like a lot of, I watch a lot of things on like at least 1.75 or 2 because I want to get through it quickly. I want to understand what's going on and keeping up, but I don't want it taking over my whole life. So yeah, I just thought it would be interesting to just kind of give you my perspective on who I'm listening to. But I take all kinds of people's opinions on board. So I do watch bits of Dave Neal. I've not seen so much of Zach lately or Dana Bolin. And I know Dave and Dana had a bit of a falling out as well, didn't they, over one at some point or other. I think it was to do with Gaza. And again, it was that thing of, it's really hard when you're an emotional person, and especially when it's related to your faith or being Jewish, as Dana is. So it's that emotional, visceral thing. Having somebody come along who insists on playing devil's advocate and kind of not diving into what that might feel like for either side, just literally, these are the facts. It's like it does cause discord between people and hurt feelings. So it's like, I do think it's important in life to consider, are you playing devil's advocate, or do you literally just want it to be your point of view and you don't want to know about any feelings, you don't want to know about what's impacting people, you'd rather just keep it on this surface level, this is the facts, this is the logic, this is what I'm going to balance my opinion on, when literally you're cutting out all of that emotion that is all of those stories that are driving it as well. And I don't think you can do that as a content creator. I guess you can do it as legacy media. I mean, behind legacy media, there's always a political side one way or the other, isn't there? There tends to be. I think when you're an independent creator, you have to dwell in both emotions and logic, I think, in order to be successful and in order to resonate with people. People want to feel like they can get to know you, I think. So I've tended to gel with, I mean, like Andy Signor's annoyed me a couple of times on Popcorn Planet when he's been really reactive with the people on his chat, and he's really kind of bashed them on his chat and hasn't taken like a tiny bit of criticism. But I guess at least he's passionate, you know what I mean? He's passionate about what he does, and he wants people there, I guess, that want to consume his content. But I think he's calmed down a bit. But when this was first started on his chats, there were a few times I thought, oh God, because he would not just tell people, he would go bang on about it for like 5 minutes and like target them in a way, and I thought, oh, that's not good either. So yeah, I tend to like I tend to just and it's what I encourage all of you to do, is keep an open mind about it all. Keep it fluid who you're following and whose opinion you're going with. Take on board what resonates with you, what feels right to you, what sits right in your gut instincts and feels true to you. And always keep an open mind as to the narrative changing, and just bear in mind that whatever you think is a story you've concocted from everybody that you've heard and listened to, So I just thought that was a little bit interesting to look at today. And the best thing you can ever do about yourself in life is keep this sense of curiosity. Where is this mind of mine wandering off to? Who am I paying attention now? Who am I slating maybe that I shouldn't be slating? Yeah, so even if you kind of, and I know kind of with Without a Crystal Ball, there was an issue, wasn't there, with Not Actually Golden, and they had a falling out, and there was an accusation of doxing from Without a Crystal Ball. But then on the same hand, did Not Actually Golden have to say that Without a Crystal Ball wasn't credible in what she was doing, you know? So it's like, we're all just trying to navigate our way through this world, aren't we? And I think as content creators covering this case, we really need to try and all be on board with each other and not dwell in slandering each other. And then I know there was something that happened with Zach, wasn't there, and Without a Crystal Ball, to do with the autism argument, because Zach has an autistic brother, I believe, and Without a Crystal Ball says she has a child with autism. So there was some fallout in the comments to do with Zach. And it's like, it's just that thing, isn't it? We're all here trying our best. We do tend to be reactive when we're passionate about things, and we get into trouble when we think our perspective on it is the only perspective that is accurate, or we feel a bit triggered because somebody else seems to know a bit more than us or be a bit more informed than us, and that threatens who we think we are. And I think there's been a bit of that going on as well. So it's all things to bear in mind going forward when you're watching people, that we are all human beings and we are just acting off all of our own stories and our own perspectives. And yeah, just think about that going forward, this idea of catching yourself, that whenever you say I think, that that means this is me making up a story based on all of my past knowledge and everything that's ever hurt me or made me happy or anything somebody else has put onto me. This here is a story I'm giving you based on all of that. So hopefully that was a little bit interesting today. Please do hit that like and subscribe and share if you feel moved to, and I will catch you again soon. See you later.